30 minutes before her wedding, the man she loved looked her in the eyes and walked away because she couldn't walk. Broken, humiliated, alone. But a stranger standing in that garden would change everything she thought she'd lost. Tessa's wedding day became her worst nightmare when the man she loved rejected her 30 minutes before the ceremony because she couldn't walk. Abandoned, humiliated, broken. But then a stranger appeared in that quiet church garden, a single father who would do something so unexpected, so powerful, that it would rewrite both their destinies. The sound hit Malcolm first. Deep, gasping sobs that sliced through the spring air like a wound being opened. He froze mid-step, his hand resting on his daughter's shoulder just outside the side entrance of Riverside Community Church in Burlington, Vermont. It was the kind of crying that tightens your chest, the kind that tells you something has shattered beyond repair. "Daddy, what's that sound?" 6-year-old Autumn whispered, her eyes wide. Malcolm hesitated. They were here for a birthday party. His daughter's classmate was celebrating in the community hall at 2 o'clock. It was May 14th, 2023, a bright Saturday morning, and they'd arrived early to help set up. This wasn't their business. Whatever was happening around that corner had nothing to do with them. But the crying didn't stop. It was raw, desperate, the sound of someone whose world had just collapsed. "Stay right here, sweetheart," Malcolm said softly, positioning Autumn by the door. "Don't move, I'll be right back." He stepped around the corner and froze. A woman sat alone in a wheelchair in the church garden, surrounded by fallen white rose petals. She wore a wedding dress, an elaborate gown with delicate lace sleeves and a long train that spilled around the wheels like melting snow. Her blonde hair was pinned in an intricate updo, tiny white flowers woven through each strand, but the makeup she'd carefully applied was now streaked down her cheeks. Her hands trembled as they gripped the arms of the chair, her shoulders shaking with each sob. She hadn't noticed Malcolm yet. She was lost in her devastation, and he stood there unsure. Should he step forward or walk away? Would his presence be an intrusion or a kindness? The decision came when she finally looked up. Hazel eyes met his. For a moment they just stared at each other. She looked startled, then embarrassed, then almost resigned, as if she'd already lost so much dignity today that one more witness didn't matter. "I'm sorry," she whispered, voice hoarse and broken. "I didn't think anyone would see me out here." Malcolm stepped forward carefully. "Are you okay?" The moment the words left his mouth, he regretted them. She clearly was. Nothing about this scene was okay. A bitter laugh escaped her throat. "Am I okay?" She gestured at herself, the dress, the wheelchair, the empty garden where guests should have been. "Today was supposed to be my wedding day. I'm in my dress. The guests are arriving, and my fiancé just told me 30 minutes ago that he can't marry me." The words landed like a physical blow. "He looked me in the eyes this morning and said he can't marry me, not because he doesn't love me, not because we're not compatible, because of this." She slapped the armrest of her wheelchair, the sound sharp in the quiet. "Because I can't walk." Malcolm felt his stomach drop. He said he tried. He said he really, really tried to be okay with it. But looking at me in this dress, knowing I'd never walk down the aisle the way we'd planned, knowing our future would be complicated, he couldn't do it. So he left, just walked out of the church, left me here in this dress in front of 200 people. Silence settled like a heavy weight. Malcolm stood there, this stranger in a church garden, watching a woman's world disintegrate in real time. He'd known pain before, the kind that carves deep grooves in your soul. But this, being rejected on your wedding day for something beyond your control, that was a cruelty he could barely fathom. Her voice was quieter now, almost detached, like she was narrating someone else's tragedy. 8 months ago, she began, I was working at a veterinary clinic. I loved my job. I loved the animals. I was good at what I did. She stared down at her hands, at the engagement ring still on her finger. Then one day, a storage rack collapsed on me. The weight crushed my spine. The surgery saved my life, but her jaw tightened. I'm paralyzed from the waist down. I'll never walk again. Malcolm's heart cracked just a little wider. Tyler, my fiancé, said he'd stay, she continued. He came to the hospital. He held my hand during rehab. He told me it didn't matter. He said we'd get through it together. We postponed the wedding for 6 months so I could focus on recovery. He seemed so supportive. He said all the right things, and I believed him. I thought he meant it. Her breath caught as she spoke. But princesses aren't supposed to be sad. Sometimes even princesses have bad days, Tessa said softly. Autumn thought seriously for a moment, then nodded. My daddy always says bad days don't last forever. The sun always comes back, even after the rain. Malcolm felt his heart swell with pride at his daughter's gentle wisdom. Can I sit with you? Autumn asked. You look like you could use a friend. And before Tessa could answer, the little girl plopped down on the grass beside her, reaching out to touch one of the white flowers in Tessa's hair. These are so pretty, she said. Did someone special put them there? My sister did, Tessa whispered. This morning before, she didn't finish, but Autumn understood more than most adults ever could. Well, I think you look beautiful, Autumn declared with the unwavering certainty only a child can have. And I think whoever made you sad was wrong. Tears welled in Tessa's eyes again, but this time they weren't entirely sad. Something inside her chest loosened. Malcolm watched his daughter and this heartbroken woman and made a quiet choice. He sat down right there in the grass beside them, jeans and all. Tessa stared at him, surprised. You don't have to. I know, Malcolm said gently, but I'm going to anyway. And so they sat there, the three of them, on what should have been Tessa's wedding day. The sun filtered through the trees above. Rose petals lay scattered like fallen snow. And for the first time since Tyler walked away, Tessa didn't feel completely alone. What's your favorite animal? Autumn suddenly asked, her voice bright and curious. Tessa blinked, caught off guard by the innocent question. I work with animals, actually, or I did. I'm a veterinary assistant. Really? Autumn's face lit up. Do you like dogs? We have a dog at home named Biscuit. He's old and he sleeps a lot, but he's really nice. Tessa smiled, a real one this time. I love dogs. Maybe you could meet Biscuit sometime, Autumn said matter-of-factly. He makes people feel better when they're sad. Daddy says that's his superpower. Malcolm met Tessa's eyes over Autumn's head. Something passed between them, an understanding, a connection neither of them expected. Footsteps sounded from the church. Naomi, Tessa's sister, appeared. She looked exhausted, her face pale and drawn. When she saw Tessa sitting with Malcolm and Autumn, confusion flickered across her features. Liv, Tessa, she corrected softly. We really need to figure out what to do. Mom and Dad are inside with the coordinator. Most of the guests have left, but there are still some people asking questions. She paused, noticing for the first time that Tessa wasn't crying anymore. Are you okay? Naomi asked carefully. No, Tessa said honestly, but I will be, just give me a few more minutes. Naomi glanced between Malcolm and Autumn, clearly trying to piece it together. Malcolm rose to his feet, giving her a small, steady nod that wordlessly told her Tessa was safe. Naomi seemed to understand. A few more minutes, she agreed softly. Then we need to get you out of that dress and go home. After Naomi disappeared back into the church, Autumn turned to Tessa with sudden determination. "You know what?" the little girl announced with all the confidence in the world. "I think we should have a party right here, a happy party to make up for the sad one." "Autumn," Malcolm began, but before he could finish, Tessa cut in with a soft smile. "Actually, that sounds perfect." Autumn beamed and immediately started gathering rose petals from the ground, piling them up like makeshift decorations. "These can be the flowers," she declared. "And Daddy, you have your phone, right? Can we play music?" Malcolm took out his phone, scrolling through his playlist with a grin. "What kind of music do princesses like?" he asked. Tessa laughed, a real unforced laugh this time. "I haven't been asked that in a very long time." "Then it's about time someone did," Malcolm replied, pressing play. Gentle acoustic music filled the garden, a soft guitar and a warm voice singing about new beginnings. Autumn handed Tessa a small bouquet of rose petals she'd arranged. "Every princess needs flowers," she said seriously. Tessa accepted them, feeling something shift deep inside her chest. This wasn't the wedding she'd imagined. This wasn't the celebration she'd planned. But in this strange, unexpected moment, sitting in a garden with a kind stranger and his daughter, she felt something she hadn't felt in months. She felt seen, not as the woman in the wheelchair, not as the rejected bride, just as Tessa. "Thank you," she whispered, looking at Malcolm. "You didn't have to stop. You didn't have to stay. You didn't have to do any of this." "Yes, I did," Malcolm said softly. "Sometimes the most important thing we can do is just show up, even when it's not our place, even when it's uncomfortable, especially then." She studied his face carefully, the sincerity in his eyes, the gentle steadiness in his voice, the quiet way he'd simply sat beside a stranger in pain. Tyler had never understood kindness like this. Kindness that wasn't about grand gestures. It was about staying, about presence, about not running away. "I don't even know your name," Tessa whispered, realizing they'd been sitting together for nearly 20 minutes. "Malcolm," he said simply. "Malcolm Foster." She took a breath. "Well, Malcolm Foster, you might have just saved my life today." He smiled softly. "I didn't save anything. I just reminded you of what you already know, that you're stronger than this moment. And what happened today doesn't get to write the rest of your story." They sat there a little longer before it was time to go. As the sun shifted higher in the sky, Autumn held Tessa's hand, and Tessa found herself holding on just as tightly. For the first time since the morning began, the crushing weight on her chest had loosened just enough to breathe again. When Naomi returned, she helped Tessa out of the gown and into her chair, quietly wiping away what was left of her ruined makeup. They drove home in silence, but something was different. The world didn't feel quite as broken as it had an hour ago. Tessa replayed that quiet moment in the garden over and over in her mind. The music, the rose petals, the stranger who didn't look away. That evening, sitting alone in her apartment with the dress packed away in a bag, her phone buzzed. She expected it to be Naomi checking in, but it was. It was an unknown number. "Hi, Tessa, it's Malcolm. I just wanted to make sure you got home okay. No need to respond if you're not up for it. Just wanted you to know someone's thinking of you." Tessa stared at the message for a long time. She thought about ignoring it. She thought about curling up in bed and shutting the world out. But then she remembered the way Malcolm had looked at her, not with pity but with respect. She remembered Autumn's bright, fearless smile. Her fingers moved on their own. "I'm home. Thank you for today, for stopping, for staying. It meant more than you know." 3 minutes later, her phone buzzed again. "I'm glad. And I meant what I said. If you need someone to talk to, I'm here, no expectations, just a friend who gets it. She hadn't realized until that moment how much she needed to hear those words. A friend who gets it. The days that followed were brutal. Tessa returned wedding gifts, fielded calls from relatives, and endured the pitying stares from neighbors who had seen the church decorations that morning. Tyler sent only one message: "I'm sorry. I hope you understand." She didn't reply. What was there to say? That she didn't understand. That sorry wasn't enough. Instead, she deleted his number and blocked him on everything. Through it all, Malcolm texted. Not constantly, not intrusively. Just enough to remind her that someone out there saw her as more than a tragic story. "How are you today? Autumn wants to know if you're feeling better. I saw a dog with a very strong personality today, made me think of your vet work." Each message was like a lifeline, small, steady reminders that life wasn't over, that her world was still turning, even if it looked different now. On the 5th day after the wedding that wasn't, she found herself waiting for one of his texts. Their conversations grew longer, flowing into late nights. They didn't talk about Tyler anymore. They talked about everything else. Books, movies, autumn, her rehab, the little pieces of life that slowly begin to stitch a broken heart together. Malcolm never tried to fix her pain. He didn't tell her to move on. He didn't offer empty, sugar-coated platitudes. He just listened. And that, more than anything, was exactly what she needed. 2 weeks after the garden, Malcolm sent a message that was different from the rest. "Autumn has a school event on Friday," he wrote. "Nothing fancy. Just a little art show where the kids display their projects. She asked if you'd want to come. No pressure, but I told her I'd ask." Tessa stared at the message, going out, being around people again, facing the world after everything that happened. The thought terrified her. But something about the way he asked, not pushy, not performative, just warm, made her want to say yes. She typed back, "What time?" Friday came faster than she expected. She spent nearly an hour agonizing over what to wear for a children's art show. Finally, she chose jeans and a simple sweater. Comfortable. Real. The school buzzed with chatter and laughter as parents moved between tables of crayon drawings and clay sculptures. Malcolm spotted her the second she entered and smiled like it genuinely mattered that she came. "You made it," he said. "I almost didn't," she admitted. "But Autumn invited me, and I don't break promises to 6-year-olds. "Smart policy," he said with a grin. Autumn ran up to her, hugging her like she'd been waiting all night. "Tessa, you came." She dragged Tessa toward her little easel. A swirl of bright colors covered the paper. In the corner, written carefully, were the words, "When bad days end." "The dark colors are the bad stuff," Autumn explained seriously. "But see the yellow and orange? That's when the bad day ends and good things start happening, because Daddy says bad days always end." Tessa felt something tighten in her chest, not with pain this time, but something else, something warm. "Your daddy is very smart," she whispered. "I know," Autumn said proudly. And for the next hour, Tessa let herself just exist in that small, bright world. The weeks that followed moved in quiet, steady waves. Tessa and Malcolm started seeing each other more often, not in some grand, cinematic way, but in the quiet moments that actually matter. Coffee meetups, walks in the park, conversations that ran late into the night about everything and nothing. Autumn tagged along often, coloring at the table or telling Tessa endless stories about her dog Biscuit. Slowly, something that started as comfort began to grow roots. Tessa shared pieces of herself she hadn't voiced since before the accident, Her love for animals, her dream of opening her own clinic one day, her fear that her wheelchair had stolen that dream. Malcolm didn't dismiss her fears or try to sugarcoat reality. He just said one thing that stuck with her. Adaptations, not limitations. You find new ways to do what you love. 3 months after the garden, life threw them a storm. Autumn had a seizure in the middle of the night. At 2 in the morning, Malcolm called Tessa. His voice was tight, holding back panic. "I'm sorry to call so late. Autumn had a bad one. We're at the hospital. She's stable now, but I needed to hear a friendly voice." Tessa didn't hesitate. "I'm on my way." 40 minutes later, she was at the hospital. Malcolm sat hunched in the waiting room, exhaustion in every line of his face. She wheeled up to him and quietly took his hand. "She's okay," he said, trying to convince himself as much as her. "The doctors say she's stable, but it was bad, Tessa, really bad. For a few minutes I thought—" He didn't finish. She squeezed his hand gently. "But she's here, and so are you. That's what matters." They sat together in silence until dawn. When Autumn was finally released, Malcolm drove Tessa home. In the soft blue light of early morning, he turned to her. "Thank you for showing up, for staying." She looked at him then, really looked at him, and realized, somewhere along the way, he'd stopped being just a kind stranger. He'd become something more. Seasons changed. Their connection deepened. Autumn began calling Tessa her bonus friend, and the three of them fell into a rhythm that felt like family. Tessa had built tall walls around her heart after Tyler. But Malcolm, with quiet patience and no expectations, simply stayed long enough for those walls to soften. One crisp autumn afternoon, exactly 6 months after the garden, Malcolm and Tessa sat on a park bench while Autumn played nearby. He looked at her, a serious softness in his eyes. "Can I ask you something personal?" She nodded. "That day at the church, you were at your lowest," he said quietly. "But look at you now. You're volunteering again. You're smiling. You're living. How did you do it?" Tessa thought for a long time. Then she said softly, You showed me I was worth showing up for. Tyler taught me I was a burden. You reminded me I was." Malcolm held her gaze. "Can I tell you something that might be wildly inappropriate?" Her breath caught. "Yes." He took a slow breath. "I didn't just stop in that garden to be kind. I mean, I did at first, but somewhere along the way, it became something more. I'm falling in love with you, Tessa." The world seemed to still for a moment. "I know it's complicated," he added quickly. "And if you don't feel the same, I'll respect that, but I needed you to know because I don't want to pretend anymore." Tessa didn't say anything. She didn't have to. She leaned forward and kissed him. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't planned. It was real. When they pulled back, both were breathless. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, it's a possibility. Yes, I'm falling for you too." Autumn came running toward them, waving a giant acorn like a trophy. "Why are you both smiling so big?" she asked innocently. Malcolm wrapped his arm around her and held Tessa's hand. "Because," he said softly, "today is a very good day." A year after that heartbreaking day, Malcolm brought Tessa back to Riverside Community Church, the place where her world had once shattered. She was nervous, but when she rolled into the side garden, her breath caught. It was filled with blooming white roses. Malcolm knelt beside her chair and took her hands in his. "Tessa, a year ago I found you here on what should have been the worst day of your life. I watched you turn pain into strength. I watched you reclaim your story, and I fell in love with every piece of you." He pulled out a small velvet box. "The first wedding dress you wore was meant for the wrong person. I'm not here to erase that day. I'm here to give you a new one where someone kneels beside you because they can't imagine their life without you." He opened the box. "Tessa, will you marry me?" Before she could answer, Autumn popped out from behind a tree holding a sign in glittery letters. "Will you be my bonus mom?" Tears poured down Tessa's face, but this time they were full of joy. "Yes," she whispered through laughter and sobs. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes." 3 months later, they were married in that same church. Tessa wheeled herself down the aisle, no one giving her away, because she was giving herself freely, fully. Malcolm knelt to meet her at eye level. Autumn held her hand, and when they said their vows, there was no doubt, no fear, just love. A year ago, she'd believed her story was over, but it was only just beginning. Tyler had walked away because he saw her wheelchair as a burden. Malcolm stayed because he saw her as his future. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs a reminder that real love doesn't run when life gets hard. It sits beside you in the mess and stays. Hit that like button if you believe love should always choose to stay. Subscribe for more powerful real-life stories that remind us. Sometimes the worst day of your life is the doorway to the best chapter you'll ever live.